Sofia was 7 years old when they took her away. She remembered the flashing lights, the shouting, and her mother's tears. The police said her father had done terrible things. They said he hurt people and stole money. Everyone believed them. The judge decided Sofia was too dangerous to live normally. The daughter of a criminal needed special watching. So they sent her to a youth detention center in the mountains, far from the city where she was born. 11 years passed slowly. Sofia grew up behind locked doors and barbed wire fences. She learned to be quiet, to follow rules, and to never trust anyone. At night, she dreamed of her father's smile and the way he used to call her his sunshine. On her 18th birthday, they finally let her go. A lawyer met her at the gate with a manila envelope and a cold expression. Inside was a key, an address, and a note that said, "Everything you need is here." Sofia walked away from that place and never looked back. Whatever waited for her in that envelope would change everything. She could feel it. The address led to a storage facility on the edge of town. Sofia's hands trembled as she unlocked Unit 47. Inside was a single wooden box covered in dust. Her name was carved into the lid in her father's handwriting. She opened it carefully. Inside were stacks of papers, a bank card, and a thick envelope with her name on it. Sofia sat on the cold concrete floor and read her father's letter. Tears streamed down her face as the truth unfolded before her eyes. Her father hadn't been a criminal. He'd been framed by his business partners who wanted everything for themselves. They planted evidence, bribed witnesses, and destroyed his reputation. Then they made sure he couldn't defend himself. At the bottom of the box was a photograph. 6 people stood together at a company party, smiling like old friends. Her father had drawn red circles around 5 faces. Underneath each circle, he'd written their names. Andrew Porter, his wife, Diane Porter, their lawyer, Wesley Grant, the accountant, Natalie Brooks, and the judge who sentenced him, Franklin Moore. These 5 people had stolen her childhood. Now she would take everything from them. The bank card had $12 million on it. Sofia stared at the number on the ATM screen, unable to believe it was real. Her father had hidden money before his arrest, protecting it so she'd have a future. She rented a small apartment and bought a laptop. For 3 months, she did nothing but research. She read every article about her father's trial, studied every court document, and memorized every detail about the 5 people who destroyed him. Andrew Porter now owned the tech company her father had built. He was rich and respected, living in a mansion by the lake. His wife, Diane, hosted charity events and appeared in magazines. Wesley Grant had become one of the city's top lawyers. Natalie Brooks ran a successful accounting firm. Judge Moore had retired with full honors. They'd all prospered while her father rotted in prison until he died. Sofia knew she couldn't approach them as herself. She needed a new identity, a new face, a new story. So she hired professionals to help her disappear and become someone else entirely. When she looked in the mirror 6 months later, even she didn't recognize herself. Perfect! Her new name was Isabella Reed. 22 years old, graduated from a business school overseas, recently returned to invest in local companies. She had social media profiles, a complete background story, and references that checked out perfectly. Sofia spent weeks learning how to act like Isabella. She practiced her voice, her walk, and her mannerisms. She studied fashion and etiquette. She became someone who belonged in their world of wealth and power. Her first target was Wesley Grant. He was the easiest to reach because he loved publicity. Every Tuesday, he gave free legal advice at a community center downtown. It was good for his image. Sofia showed up one Tuesday morning with a fake legal question about starting a business. Wesley was charming and helpful, giving her his business card and suggesting they meet at his office for a proper consultation. "I think I can help you," he said with a professional smile. Sofia smiled back, tucking the card into her designer purse. She'd just gotten her foot in the door. The rest would follow naturally. As she walked away, she felt a strange mix of excitement and anger building inside her chest. Wesley's office was impressive, located in the tallest building downtown. Sofia arrived exactly on time, dressed in an expensive suit that made her look successful and trustworthy. She played her part perfectly. They discussed her fake business plans for an hour. Wesley was impressed by her knowledge and ambition. He didn't recognize her at all. Why would he? The last time he'd seen her, she was a crying 7-year-old being dragged away by social workers. "You remind me of someone I used to know," Wesley said suddenly. "A brilliant businessman who had big dreams like yours." Sofia's heart raced, but she kept her expression calm. "Really? Who?" "Thomas Reed," Wesley said, using her father's name. "We were partners once. Brilliant man, but he made some terrible choices. Ended up in prison." Sofia wanted to scream at him. Her father hadn't made terrible choices. Wesley had framed him. But she just nodded sympathetically and changed the subject. Over the next few weeks, she became Wesley's newest client. He trusted her completely, never suspecting that every meeting brought him closer to his downfall. Sofia was patient. Revenge wasn't something you rushed. Through Wesley, Sofia learned about an upcoming charity gala hosted by Diane Porter. All the important people in the city would attend, including Andrew Porter himself. This was her chance to get close to the main target. She bought a ticket for $5,000 and prepared carefully. The night of the gala, she wore a stunning red dress and arrived in a hired car. The venue was a luxury hotel ballroom filled with chandeliers and expensive decorations. Sofia moved through the crowd like she belonged there. She made small talk with strangers, laughed at boring jokes, and watched Andrew Porter from across the room. He was tall and confident, shaking hands and smiling for photos. Near the bar, she struck up a conversation with a woman who turned out to be Natalie Brooks, the accountant. Natalie was friendly and talkative, especially after a few glasses of wine. She mentioned that her firm was looking for new investors. "You should come by my office," Natalie said, handing Sofia her card. "We could discuss opportunities." Sofia thanked her and slipped the card into her purse. 2 targets in one night. Things were moving faster than she'd expected. Across the room, Andrew Porter glanced her way. Their eyes met for just a moment. The next morning, Sofia received an unexpected email. It was from Andrew Porter's assistant, inviting her to a private business lunch. Apparently, Andrew had noticed her at the gala and asked around about who she was. Her fake background had impressed him. Sofia's heart pounded as she read the invitation. This was happening faster than she'd planned, but she couldn't refuse. She accepted the lunch meeting and spent the next 2 days preparing. The restaurant was exclusive and expensive. Andrew was already seated when she arrived, looking relaxed and powerful in his expensive suit. He stood to greet her with a firm handshake. "Isabella Reed," he said warmly. "I've heard interesting things about you." They talked about business and investments. Andrew was charming and intelligent, exactly the kind of person who could convince others to trust him. Sofia understood how he'd fooled her father all those years ago. "I'm always looking for smart investors," Andrew said. "My company is expanding, and I think you'd be a perfect fit." Sofia smiled and asked careful questions, playing the role of an interested but cautious investor. Inside, her mind was racing. She was sitting across from the man who destroyed her family, and he had no idea who she really was. Over the next month, Sofia became a regular presence in Andrew's business circle. She attended meetings, networking events, and casual dinners. Everyone accepted her as Isabella Reed, the young investor with family money and big ambitions. She learned Andrew's routines and habits. Every Thursday, he met with his core team at the office. Every Friday evening, he played golf at an exclusive club. On Sundays, he had family dinner at his mansion by the lake. Sofia also discovered something interesting. Andrew and Wesley had a secret partnership that wasn't public knowledge. They were planning to buy out a smaller tech company using insider information. It was illegal, but they'd done it before and never been caught. This was her opportunity. Through her hacker contact, Sofia began collecting evidence of their illegal activities. Emails, financial records, recorded phone calls, everything she needed to expose them. But she wouldn't use it yet. The timing had to be perfect. Meanwhile, she accepted Andrew's invitation to invest in his company. She transferred $2 million into a joint venture account. Andrew was thrilled, treating her like a valued partner. He had no idea he just invited a wolf into his house. Sofia's next move was to get closer to Diane Porter. Andrew's wife was the social queen of their circle, and everyone wanted her approval. Sofia knew that gaining Diane's trust would open even more doors. She volunteered at one of Diane's charity organizations, working on fundraising events. Diane noticed her dedication and invited her to a private tea party at the mansion. Sofia accepted eagerly. The Porter mansion was enormous and beautiful, filled with expensive art and furniture. Diane gave her a tour, showing off the home with obvious pride. Sofia smiled and complimented everything, even though each room made her angrier. This house was built on stolen money. Her father's money. During tea, Diane talked about her life and family. She mentioned having a son who was away at college. He's studying business, just like his father, she said proudly. Sofia filed that information away. She hadn't known Andrew had a son. That could be useful later. As she left the mansion that afternoon, Sofia took one last look at the building. Soon, everything the Porters owned would come crashing down around them. She would make sure of it. While building her relationship with the Porters, Sofia hadn't forgotten about Natalie Brooks. The accountant was important because she'd helped hide the evidence that framed Sofia's father. She knew where all the financial bodies were buried. Sofia visited Natalie's office with a proposal. She wanted to invest in several local businesses and needed expert accounting advice. Natalie was happy to help, especially when Sofia offered to pay premium rates for her services. Over coffee, Natalie talked freely about her work. She was proud of her success and loved discussing her biggest cases. Eventually, she mentioned Sofia's father without realizing the connection. I once worked on a major fraud case, Natalie said. Helped expose a man who was stealing from his own company. Thomas Reed. The trial was huge news. Sofia's grip tightened on her coffee cup, but she kept her voice steady. That must have been complicated. Oh, it was, Natalie continued. But the evidence was clear. Well, mostly clear. Some of it needed interpretation. Sofia's blood ran cold. Interpretation. That was a polite way of saying they'd manipulated the evidence. Natalie had just admitted to helping frame her father, and she didn't even realize it. That confession would be useful very soon. Sofia had been recording all her conversations with Natalie using a hidden device. She now had hours of audio where Natalie discussed questionable accounting practices and hinted at manipulating evidence in past cases. But Sofia needed more than hints. She needed proof. Through her hacker, she gained access to Natalie's office computer system. It took 3 weeks of careful work, but they finally found what they were looking for. Old files from her father's case, including original documents that had been altered before being submitted to court. The evidence was clear. Natalie had changed financial records to make it look like Sofia's father was stealing money when he wasn't. She created false transactions and hidden real ones. It was all there in the original files she'd foolishly kept. Sofia downloaded everything and stored it in multiple secure locations. This evidence could send Natalie to prison for fraud and perjury. But again, Sofia waited. She was collecting weapons, building an arsenal of evidence against all 5 targets. When she finally struck, it would be devastating and complete. Meanwhile, she continued playing the role of Isabella Reed, the friendly investor everyone trusted. No one suspected a thing. Judge Franklin Moore was the hardest target to approach. He was retired and rarely appeared in public. He lived in a quiet neighborhood and kept to himself. Sofia needed a different strategy to reach him. She discovered that the judge volunteered at a legal aid clinic twice a month, helping people who couldn't afford lawyers. It was his way of giving back to the community, maintaining his reputation as a fair and honorable man. Sofia created a fake legal problem and showed up at the clinic one Saturday morning. She waited patiently until Judge Moore was available, then presented her manufactured case. He listened carefully and offered thoughtful advice. "You remind me why I became a judge," he said kindly. "To help people find justice." Sofia wanted to laugh at the irony. This man talked about justice while he'd sent an innocent man to prison. But she just thanked him politely and asked if they could schedule a follow-up meeting. Judge Moore agreed, giving her his contact information. Sofia left the clinic feeling satisfied. She'd now made contact with all 5 targets. The pieces were falling into place. Soon, she would start tearing their lives apart, one by one. Everything changed one Tuesday afternoon. Sofia was having lunch near Andrew's office when she saw someone unexpected. A young man, maybe 19 or 20, with familiar eyes and dark hair. He looked strikingly like her father. Sofia followed him at a distance, her heart racing. The young man met Andrew Porter outside a coffee shop. They hugged, and Andrew ruffled his hair affectionately. This had to be Andrew's son, home from college. But something about him seemed different from his parents. He didn't have their cold, calculating expressions. He looked kind, almost innocent. Sofia took photos and sent them to her hacker. Within hours, she had a full report. His name was Lucas Porter, 20 years old, studying environmental science, not business like his mother had said. He'd apparently changed his major without telling his parents. The report also mentioned that Lucas volunteered at an animal shelter and donated most of his allowance to environmental causes. He seemed nothing like his father. Sofia felt conflicted. Lucas was innocent in all this. He'd been a child when everything happened. But he was still a porter, still benefiting from stolen money. She wasn't sure what to do about him yet. Sofia's first major move came 3 months after she'd started her plan. She gathered enough evidence against Wesley Grant to destroy his career. It was time to use it. She anonymously sent documents to the State Bar Association showing that Wesley had been bribing court officials and manipulating evidence in multiple cases. The evidence was undeniable and came from his own files. Within a week, Wesley was under investigation. His law license was suspended, and several of his past cases were being reviewed. The news spread quickly through their social circle. Sofia watched it all unfold from a distance. She sent Wesley a sympathy message as Isabella offering support. He responded gratefully, completely unaware that she'd caused his downfall. Andrew called her that evening, sounding worried. "Did you hear about Wesley? I can't believe it. We've been friends for 20 years. It's terrible," Sofia said, keeping her voice concerned. "Do they know who reported him?" "No, it was anonymous. But whoever did it had access to his private files. It's disturbing." Sofia could hear the fear in Andrew's voice. He was wondering if he might be next. Good. Let him worry. Let him feel the anxiety her father must have felt when his world collapsed. This was only the beginning. With Wesley Grant's career in ruins, Sofia turned her attention to Natalie Brooks. The accountant was nervous after what happened to Wesley, but she tried to maintain her normal routine. Sofia scheduled a meeting at Natalie's office to discuss expanding their business relationship. Natalie seemed eager for the distraction and welcomed her warmly. During their conversation, Sofia casually mentioned hearing about Wesley's troubles. "It's scary how one mistake can destroy everything you've built," she said. Natalie's face went pale. "Yes, very scary. I mean, imagine if someone found old files from years ago. Things that seemed fine at the time but might look bad now." Natalie's hands started shaking. Sofia could see the fear in her eyes. The accountant knew exactly what she was talking about. That night, Sofia sent an anonymous package to the district attorney's office. Inside were copies of the altered documents from her father's case, along with a detailed explanation of how Natalie had manipulated the evidence. She also sent copies to 3 major newspapers. By morning, Natalie Brooks was headline news. The woman who'd helped convict Thomas Reed had falsified evidence. The case was being reopened. Natalie was arrested for fraud and perjury. Sofia watched the news coverage with cold satisfaction. The revelation about Natalie Brooks sent shockwaves through the city. If the evidence in Thomas Reed's case was falsified, then maybe he'd been innocent all along. Journalists started investigating, digging into the old trial. Andrew Porter called an emergency meeting with his core team. Sofia was included because of her investment in the company. She sat quietly in the conference room, watching Andrew try to control the situation. "This doesn't affect us," Andrew said firmly. "Thomas Reed's case was 15 years ago. It has nothing to do with our current business." But Sofia could see the worry in his eyes. He knew the truth. If people kept digging, they might discover his role in framing Thomas Reed. The walls were closing in. After the meeting, Andrew asked Sofia to stay behind. "Isabella, I need to ask you something. Have you heard any rumors about me? About the old case?" Sofia looked him straight in the eyes. "No, nothing. Why would there be rumors about you?" Andrew relaxed slightly. "No reason. Just being cautious. These are difficult times." Sofia nodded sympathetically, but inside she was smiling. Andrew was scared. He should be. His turn was coming very soon. Judge Franklin Moore became the next target. Sofia had been patient with him, waiting for the right moment. With Natalie's arrest, that moment had arrived. She sent an anonymous tip to an investigative journalist, pointing them toward Judge Moore's financial records from 15 years ago. Around the time of her father's trial, the judge had made several large deposits that couldn't be explained by his salary. The journalist dug deeper and found connections between Judge Moore and Andrew Porter. They'd met privately several times before and during the trial. There were photos, phone records, and financial transactions that suggested bribery. The story broke on a Wednesday morning. Retired judge under investigation for corruption in historic case. The article detailed the suspicious payments and meetings, raising serious questions about the fairness of Thomas Reed's trial. Judge Moore held a press conference, denying everything. But the evidence was strong, and public opinion had already turned against him. The man who built his reputation on justice and fairness was now seen as corrupt. Sofia watched the press conference from her apartment. Judge Moore looked old and tired, nothing like the powerful figure who'd sentenced her father. She felt no pity for him. He'd stolen her childhood. Now she was taking his legacy. With 3 targets down, Sofia focused entirely on Andrew and Diane Porter. They were the main architects of her father's destruction. They deserved the worst punishment she could deliver. Sofia continued attending business meetings and social events, maintaining her cover as Isabella Reed. But she noticed Andrew becoming more paranoid. He started questioning people, looking for threats, suspecting everyone. One evening, Diane called Sofia unexpectedly. "Isabella, can we meet for coffee? I need to talk to someone I trust." They met at a quiet cafe. Diane looked exhausted, her perfect appearance cracking under stress. "Everything is falling apart," she said quietly. "Wesley's career is over. Natalie is going to prison. Judge Moore is being investigated. And people are starting to ask questions about Andrew." Sofia reached across the table and squeezed Diane's hand. "I'm sure it will be okay. Andrew hasn't done anything wrong, has he?" Diane's eyes filled with tears. "That's just it. I don't know anymore. Andrew has been acting so strange. He's destroying old files and having secret meetings. I'm scared, Isabella. What if he did something terrible?" Sofia felt a surge of satisfaction. Diane was starting to suspect her own husband. The cracks in their perfect life were widening. "Whatever happens, I'm here for you," Sofia said softly. Sofia's hacker discovered something unexpected while monitoring Andrew's communications. Andrew had hired a private investigator to look into Isabella Reed's background. He was getting suspicious. This was dangerous. If the investigator dug deep enough, he might uncover the truth about her fake identity. Sofia needed to act quickly. She decided to accelerate her timeline. Instead of slowly destroying Andrew's reputation, she would hit him with everything at once. Through her hacker, she compiled all the evidence she'd gathered over the past months. Illegal business deals, insider trading, bribery, tax fraud, and most importantly, proof that Andrew had deliberately framed Thomas Reed to steal his company. She had emails where Andrew discussed planting evidence, financial records showing he paid Wesley and Natalie to help, even a recorded phone call where Andrew admitted to Judge Moore that Thomas Reed was innocent. Her father had hidden a recording device in his office before his arrest. He'd suspected betrayal and wanted proof. That recording had been in the wooden box, stored on an old cassette tape Sofia had digitized. It was the smoking gun that proved everything. Sofia prepared packages for the police, the FBI, the media, and the district attorney. Everything would be sent simultaneously. Andrew Porter's world would explode in a single day. Before she destroyed Andrew completely, Sofia did something unexpected. She reached out to Lucas Porter through social media using a fake account. She told him she was a journalist investigating his father's past and asked if they could meet. Lucas agreed, curious but cautious. They met at a park, far from anywhere his parents might see them. Sofia wore a disguise, just to be safe. "Why do you want to talk to me?" Lucas asked. "Because I think you deserve to know the truth about your father," Sofia said. "Before everyone else finds out." She told him everything. How Andrew had framed an innocent man. How he'd stolen a company and built his fortune on lies. How Thomas Reed had died in prison for crimes he didn't commit. Lucas listened in shocked silence. When Sofia finished, he looked devastated. "Do you have proof of this?" Sofia showed him copies of the evidence on her tablet. Lucas read through it, his face growing paler with each page. Finally, he looked up with tears in his eyes. "I knew something was wrong. My father always seemed so secretive about his past, but I never imagined." He trailed off, I'm sorry, Sofia said, and she meant it. But the truth is coming out tomorrow. I wanted you to hear it first. The next morning, Sofia sent everything. Every piece of evidence, every document, every recording. She sent it all simultaneously to dozens of recipients. By noon, Andrew Porter was arrested at his office. The charges included fraud, conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice. The police also arrested Diane Porter as an accomplice, though her involvement was less clear. The media exploded with the story. Tech mogul arrested for framing business partner. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Andrew's company stock crashed. His assets were frozen. His reputation was destroyed completely. Sofia watched the news coverage from her apartment. She saw Andrew being led away in handcuffs, looking confused and defeated. She saw Diane crying in the back of a police car. She saw their mansion surrounded by reporters and cameras. This was the moment she'd been working toward for months. Her father had been vindicated. The truth was finally public. The people who destroyed her family were facing justice. But Sofia didn't feel the satisfaction she'd expected. Instead, she felt empty and tired. Revenge hadn't healed the pain. It hadn't brought her father back. It hadn't given her back those lost years. She'd won, but somehow it felt like losing. In the aftermath, Sofia's fake identity started to unravel. The private investigator Andrew had hired released his findings to the police. They discovered that Isabella Reed didn't exist. The real question was, who had orchestrated Andrew Porter's downfall? Sofia knew she had to disappear. She prepared for this possibility, having multiple exit strategies ready. But before she left, there was one more thing she needed to do. She went to her father's grave for the first time since his death. It was in a small cemetery outside the city, a simple headstone with his name and dates. Sofia knelt in the grass and finally let herself cry. "I did it, Dad," she whispered. "They're all paying for what they did to you. But I don't feel better. I don't feel anything except tired." She stayed there for an hour, talking to him, apologizing for taking so long, telling him about everything she'd done. The sun was setting when she finally stood to leave. That's when she saw Lucas Porter standing a few feet away. He'd been watching her. "You're not Isabella Reed," he said quietly. "You're his daughter. You're Sofia." Sofia didn't deny it. There was no point anymore. Lucas walked closer, his expression sad but not angry. "I figured it out yesterday. The way you talked about my father, the pain in your voice. You weren't just a journalist. This was personal." Sofia nodded slowly. "Your father destroyed my life. I spent 11 years locked away because of what he did. I lost everything." "I know," Lucas said. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what my father did to you and your dad." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Lucas said something Sofia didn't expect. "I testified against my father this morning. I told the police everything I know about his business practices. I'm helping them build their case." Sofia stared at him in surprise. "Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Lucas said simply. "He's my father and I love him. But what he did was wrong. Your father deserved justice. You deserve better." Sofia felt tears running down her face again. Lucas was nothing like his parents. He was good and honest, willing to do the right thing even when it hurt. "Thank you," she whispered. Lucas nodded. "What will you do now?" "I don't know," Sofia admitted. "Disappear, probably. Start over somewhere new. Or you could stay and reclaim your real life." Sofia thought about Lucas's words for days. She'd been so focused on revenge that she hadn't considered what came after. Could she really reclaim her identity? Could she live as Sofia again, instead of hiding behind fake names? The police were looking for the person who'd orchestrated the evidence release. But they were also calling that person a hero. Public opinion had turned strongly in favor of Thomas Reed's memory. People wanted to know who had worked so hard to expose the truth. Sofia made a decision. She contacted a lawyer, the same one who'd given her the wooden box, and told him everything. He advised her to turn herself in voluntarily and tell her story. "You didn't break any major laws," he explained. "You exposed criminals and brought evidence to light. Yes, you used a false identity, but given your circumstances, most people will understand why." Sofia agreed. She was tired of hiding and running. She wanted her real name back. She wanted people to know that Thomas Reed's daughter had fought for him. She surrendered to the police on a Monday morning. She told them everything, showed them her evidence, and explained her entire plan. They arrested her, but the charges were minor compared to what the others faced. Her story leaked to the media within hours. The public reaction was overwhelming. People called Sofia a hero. They said she'd exposed corruption and fought for justice when no one else would. Supporters gathered outside the courthouse during her hearing. The judge was sympathetic. Given Sofia's age when she was imprisoned, the injustice she'd suffered, and the fact that she'd exposed genuine criminals, he sentenced her to community service and probation. No prison time. Sofia walked out of the courthouse a free woman. Cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, but she ignored them all. She just wanted to go home. Lucas was waiting for her outside. He'd been at every hearing, supporting her even though it meant going against his own family. They'd become unlikely friends through this nightmare. "What now?" he asked as they walked away from the crowd. Sofia smiled for the first time in months. "Now I figure out who Sofia really is. Not the girl who went to prison. Not the woman seeking revenge. Just me." "That sounds good," Lucas said. They walked together into the afternoon sun. Sofia's father had been cleared of all charges posthumously. The 5 people who destroyed him were facing justice, and she had finally found peace. The girl who came back had finished her mission. Now she could finally start living.